what do you think the human skill is that people need to embrace and people need to develop to be ready for this whole world of AI and automation that's coming?
Yeah. Um, because we'll need it. I think it's a creativity because I think
Hmm.
that uniquely human attribute. If you ask AI to show it a picture and say, draw this picture like Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, it'll produce a pretty good result. But then if you say produce or draw something that's never heard of and based on some artist that's never been heard of, then you're probably not going to get a good result because the AI is just not creative. It does what it has been taught and trained on, but it can't take that next leap at this point.
Hi, welcome to the Agent Odyssey podcast. I'm Matt Wyman, CEO and co-founder of Acario. We're an agent simulation company that helps you map agent behaviors before they affect your business and figure out how to make your agents better. Today, I have Matt Miller, CEO and founder of Zive, with us on the podcast. Matt, when I turn it over to you, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about Zive and maybe some of the other projects you're working on.
Great. And thanks, Matt. It's great to be here. I appreciate you having me. So I'm the co-founder of Zive, which is a AI recruitment platform. We're focusing on business development right now initially. So we've got a lot of tools out there with AI and automation don't really address the sales and business development side of things. They mostly focus on sourcing in the staffing industry. We do plan to roll out, recruiting, sourcing tools as well as a marketplace early next year in 2026, which will be really exciting. There's more to come on that, but yeah, so we're busy. And
I can
before that,
imagine.
yeah, we started a couple months ago in May, and then before that, I had Precision Logic. I was a consultant for AI and automation to provide those custom solutions for staffing companies.
Excellent. Well, I mean, you're dealing with, especially if you're looking at recruiting and all those different business situations, you're looking at a huge cross section of data and processes as people think about like, how do they recruit? How do they bring people in? And I have to imagine as you're building agents and trying to, gather signals that you actually have this sort of question mark that sits in that flow somewhere, starting with, okay, brought data in, but at what point do people start to trust that data and trust the decisions that come out of that data? I'm kind of curious how you're approaching, decision making when agents are involved in the recruiting process.
Yeah, it's been really fascinating, that topic across both companies. At Precision Logic, talking to a bunch of CEOs for staffing industries across all sizes. And then Zive, seeing how AI automation as a SaaS service works within their organizations and seeing people's level of comfortability with AI. And I say AI automation because I think automation goes kind of hand in hand with AI. Uh, Manual processes that people do, but you have to have automation. When you integrate AI, it's good to have automation, helps keep the flow going. But yeah, it is interesting on how things, I would say, like, play out, because a lot of companies say, "Oh, yeah, I want AI. There's total benefits from it, I hear." And then when you get in to help or start talking about implementation or challenges that they're having, the the biggest pivot I think companies need to make, that I think a lot of people are having trouble with right now, is you have to be able to up for a fair amount of change and giving up some control. And to do that, you need trust, right? Like you mentioned. So it gets to a point where the company will say, you know, I want to do this, but this is the way I do it, and this works. And recruiting, staffing, they're doing sales, making revenue. And if you shift that boat or rock the boat, it's they don't want to take that risk. It's too much risk. But if you don't, in the long term, make that adjustment and make that pivot with AI, you are going to lose out, I think. So there are folks that I work with that are like, yeah, let's do it. They're up for the change. Let's try anything. They use Zive, for example, the platform, and you go in 20 minutes a week, upload a couple resumes. It does your analysis of the resume, finds the right hiring managers, the right companies, emails them for you, and they generate leads automatically through the system. Others, though, they want us to adjust the system to be like
Mm.
manual process. So I want to do this manually. I want to make this decision. I want to control this. And we're like, well, it doesn't do that. I'm sorry. At first, we were trying to make everybody have to do that. Um, yeah. So I think you have to do it kind of slowly with people. So introduce pieces of the automation and the AI. Once they get confident, okay, I see what it's doing. I trust it. Now we can do something else. And then they start adapting it slowly in their processes. But if they won't take that first step of trying to learn and give it a chance, then they're going to get stuck, I think.
You're gonna get stuck immediately. Does that mean that you're also building the product in such a way that it can be sort of chunked into these automation experiences that then you can, as they progress, they can link together? Or how are you dealing with that from a trust product standpoint?
Yeah. So we initially, our vision was to have it described, you just upload the resume and it does the AI and automation handles the rest for you. And we thought people will love this, saves so much time, there's results. And then we started getting a fair amount of requests, I would say, on things like, well, this part, like I mentioned, this part I want to do myself, or this part I'm better at
Hmm,
emails than the AI. So we started building in toggles where you can turn the AI on and off at certain areas of the system. So if you wanted
interesting.
it to stop after maybe found the companies, or if you wanted to tell the companies yourself, like, oh, I just want to target Google, Meta, and Apple, then it'll do that. Don't let the AI pick. So we have built in those types of customizations to allow people to kind of piecemeal it into their process and then automate it and then introduce the AIs to get more comfortable.
Do you find that there's a trend there as people start to piecemeal? Do they piecemeal and then they get comfortable and then turn that off? Or how does that what's that
Um,
life cycle look like?
it's it's kind of fascinating. I'm kind of a little shocked to see the range of, um, uh, I guess, uh, yeah, adoptability maybe. Um, yeah, there are people that, like I said, mentioned. There's the ones on the way right that the very just like let's do everything automated AI. Others like this won't work for me for this to work. I need to do this. I need to control this. I need this. And I was like, well, no, that's not going to work. I'm sorry. I have to part ways with some customers because we are trying to stick to our core vision of what we're trying to accomplish.
Right.
But no, I'd say for the majority of them in the middle, there are certain things they do want to control. Like a lot of people like the email control, writing their own emails. So that's fine. But they do automate the rest. Yeah, I would say that's the majority of our users. Like, but eventually they convert to the full automation. But yeah, there's a range.
As they see lots of examples of the emails that would have been sent, they get more comfortable with it. It's interesting. And I don't know about your specific business, but I've seen elsewhere where a similar trend. But there's a funny um, after effect that I've also seen, which is there's that trust issue at the beginning. Then they begin to trust the system. They start to delegate some manner of, I'll call it control, to these agents that are doing the and then they become, well, lazy. They just let it go and they don't check back in. They're like, just, oh, I assume it's right. It was right then. And I'm curious about that side of the loop too. I mean, how are you helping people make sure that they come back and they check in and, it's trust but verify, right? Like, what about the
Yeah.
verify? How are you helping people do that portion of the journey?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So our vision and goal is to like the AI will be trustworthy. You can just let it run. You don't have to worry about thinking about it until you make a placement, then turn it off. But yeah, in reality, we do. We try to provide as much feedback on what the system's doing, the results the AI is producing, like via email or updates, notifications. So hopefully they see these things like, oh, if something looks off, go check. So because AI is not perfect yet.
No,
So I think people expect it to be. A lot of folks that are really familiar with working with AIs, there is that balance of this will help
but
you
I
a
think
lot,
you can.
but keep an eye on it.
I agree, and I think you can actually substitute just humans for that word as well for AI because humans aren't perfect either, and we build systems to try to have operational, you know I'll call it controls, but a smooth operations. But typically, you also have mechanisms to see how the larger system is performing. You have KPIs, you have sort of overarching business visibility into how a system is running, and as we delegate some of these systems over to agents to go run, we still have the responsibility as business people to make sure the systems are operating the way we'd expect them to, regardless of whether it was an agent or a human that was getting that portion of the work done, especially if we want the two to seamlessly merge together. And so I was just wondering, and I think it's interesting you're saying, like, look, we're trying to get to that full scope, but it sounds like there are enough people that have some steps along the way that is sort of naturally in the system already. That visibility is already naturally there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you
There are. It's it is. We do have some users that I'm kind of
they've
impressed
gone the
about.
rest of the way?
Well, yeah, no, but I like sometimes the AI like really impresses you, you know. So
Yeah.
it like for example, some of our users they'll like they want to put in very specific types of people they want to target and titles and hiring managers, descriptions and types of companies, and then run their search and their like the scoring and whatnot will be kind of off, but they don't really go back and tweak their search. But then at
Oh,
night,
that's interesting.
the AI agent picks up and looks at the resume and analyzes things and will adjust their search to the best types of people that are the best fit for that person and likely to hire that person. So it's funny that at first we were like, why is it doing this? But then they're like, oh, this is actually better because the results are better. So yeah, that when that happens, it's like, oh, yeah, this is cool. This is working.
Yeah, that's very cool. It's like
Yeah.
autonomous reinforcement, right? It's reinforcing the right action, even though maybe the human didn't quite get it right to begin
Right.
with. But that's interesting because that also comes into scoring, which is a big issue in recruiting, right? If part of the recruiting process, you have your panel and your panel. I mean, I'm making assumptions here, but I'll just go with them for a moment. But typically, there's a panel and people indicate what was good and bad. Ideally, there's some sort of rubric that people are asking and having conversation around. And sometimes it's hard to interpret what actually is good versus not good. And I'm curious if you're also applying agents to that portion of the recruiting process to make sure that there's more consistency. It sounds like maybe you are, but maybe you can tell us more about how you're thinking about basically transparency around the scoring.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, yeah, I'd referred to scoring earlier too. So we build in scoring to help you because if you get a list of 500 people, it's like, okay, where do you start? You go through everybody. So we introduced scoring to help, pull the best to the top. It was just a score, like there wasn't any really um, explanation. So people are like, okay, what does this mean? Why is this 96 and why is this 95? And it really the AI was providing the score, so it wasn't like an algorithm X, Y, and Z is Y. But for example, if you're looking for, you have maybe a director of software engineering that wants a job in the Bay Area tech company, the system may score them high and provide companies, but then when you see the location of the company, it might be in LA, and the context it recommends might be in Seattle or different locations. You're like, these don't match. Why is this? They're
One of
not.
these things is not like the other.
Yeah. But the AI said, oh, the AI knows, it will provide a reason that it knows that they do a lot of business in San Francisco. And these
Mm.
hire them and they hire remotely. So the AI knows all this stuff. So we actually started, rebuilt the whole results page. So it shows the reason behind every score, like directly next to the person. So it'll explain why that location was brought up for that score and why that person in that company is relevant. So once we added that, that like answered all the questions pretty much. So it was
Yeah,
super clear on what's happening.
yeah. I love the fact that you're thinking about the human interaction side of it of explainability, right? So it sounds like you recognize you needed explainability, but then now it's more about review as opposed to trying to set controls and guidance. It's a different mental model. Um, are you finding that there are certain types of items which the explanation's unacceptable? I mean, God forbid, but bias and other issues coming in that the AI is sort of unaware. It's unaware and therefore makes decisions that are perfectly explainable but absolutely unacceptable. Are you finding that those are issues as well?
I would say fortunately not. We have not yet, but yeah, but we did put a lot of time, like we were developing the scoring, or around the prompt to ensure like there's no hallucinations, just control of quality in the results. And if something, or if the initial list comes back and things like the agent, this doesn't make sense, it will know to reject that result. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, so far bias has not been an issue, which is good. But yeah, we are
I mean,
very
there are other types that may not
yeah
be quite as edgy. Like, okay, that's at the extreme. I raised the one that's at the extreme, but there are others that are less extreme that also could come in, and like the location that the AI may
yeah
focus on something, and then but when the human reads it and they say like, okay, that's an explain that the answer has been explained. I understand the answer. I understand why it was selected, and I don't like it. I want it to be something else.
yeah
Like, how have you thought about that feedback loop
yeah
to go back to the beginning and say, no, 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 let's course correct the decision making here? How are you connecting those?
So that is a good point. We yeah, with the location stuff particularly, initially we weren't showing any explanations about the locations, but when we started adjusting the AI, the prompts and all that to explain why this result is here based on location, I think that just started tweaking the results to be better because it
Mm,
started realizing that location is important. Like it needs to be relevant, it needs to be highly relevant. So it can't just be like, oh, they have a small satellite office in San Francisco or something.
right.
Yeah, so that type of thought process. So I'm thinking of like what is the most valuable stuff in your result. Definitely makes a big difference when you're obviously building the prompts and whatnot. So otherwise, yeah, you will get stuff that doesn't make sense.
Is that mostly stuff that you're doing or your customers are doing?
Doing the
That kind
prompt
of tuning.
that is all me right now. So I look at all the
It makes
results,
sense.
the activity. Yeah, so it's I love it. It's my passion.
Yeah.
But
No, but it makes sense you do that centrally, right? So that is a good example of something that is reproducible, and it's a concern that many would have. I'm also kind of curious the other side of explainability, governance, right? I'm curious, and maybe it's not an issue. I don't know. I'm asking the question, and I ask it of many, just to understand, like, where is this showing up? Where does governance live? Lots of people talk about it, but how many are actually doing it? Do you find you're having to also attach to some sort of governance system inside of your customers, or provide reporting or anything like that?
I will say not yet. We've
Yeah.
been we're 6 months in or so. So we most of our clients are smaller. It's kind of we're checking them out free for all for now. But
But not yet suggests that you think it might come.
I think it will. Mm,
That's
I
interesting.
know larger organizations definitely governance on AI is a huge priority and importance.
Well, on recruiting too, right? There's typically oversight on recruiting itself. Like the intersection there's pretty clear, or like there's a suggestion the two might want to come together. Um, how do you feel about that actually?
Yeah,
I'm
I mean
just
that.
curious.
That's kind of it's a big topic. Um, it is well. I mean, yeah. So there's a lot of just laws when it comes to hiring, staffing, and all that stuff. And if you're not aware of the laws and your AI is not configured of what the laws are, so it could start hiring or targeting based on gender or the
Who knows
demographics,
what?
demographics that you can't do like
Yeah,
things. So, fortunately, I've been in the staffing industry for 20 years. My business partners just about the same. So we know we're very familiar with what things
but
to
it
be
comes
to build these safeguards around for my dog.
but it comes back to that explainability that you mentioned just a moment ago, where sure, the system has a set of rules and has a set of sort of logic and behaviors built into it that you're continuing to create. But there's also explainability and visibility that the customer, the person who's actually doing the recruiting, is responsible for, and they need to come back and look at. And they can't just say, you know, I need an XYZ person in this location, go and put their hands up and say, the system just does it all for me. They actually have there is a responsibility, even if the system is automated just as though they hired a person to go do that work. I think the responsibility is still there, which is
Yep.
why I asked the governance question, because
Yeah.
sure, you have to tie into governance, but is it really any different than what you would have normally done anyway if this was an outsourced staffing resource? Like, okay, I hired a person to go look for people. Okay, the person happens to be, an automated system, but it's all the responsibilities are still the same from the customer's standpoint. And I just wondered how you saw governance from that perspective.
Yeah.
Um,
I would say, yeah, one last thing. Yeah, no, and I think people are across the board. Some people are like, if they're bringing on AI, they just trust it to take the wheel and off it goes. And yeah, you really, really can't do that. Yeah, you do need to, like it's an employer, just a person. You need to make sure the results are, you know, governed and proper, and there's no gaps because you need to train too and fix the areas. Like
it
that.
also means that, I mean, I don't know if you agree, but my perspective is it also means that even as a vendor offering these capabilities, it it's actually not your responsibility to be perfect. It is your responsibility to be transparent. In other words,
Yes.
you need to be the best you can be. That's how they're going to select whether they want to work with you or not. Um, but it is still their responsibility to own the outcome. They need you to be clear about what that outcome, like what's contributing to the outcome, but they don't get to like act. And this is kind of what I was earlier, like talking about laziness. This is the other side of laziness, right? They can't just lazily point at you and say, "Well, it's all them. It's all in them." No, they're using they're using a tool. They still have to be responsible for what that tool does and make sure those controls are in place.
Absolutely.
Um, I'm curious as we think about how people actually consume. Um, I always ask this question about skill, and what do you think the human skill is that people need to embrace and people need to develop to be ready for this whole world of AI and automation that's coming?
Yeah. Because we'll need it. No,
Yeah, it's coming no matter what.
right. No, I think I'd say creativity because I think that uniquely human attribute. Like if you ask AI to show it a picture and say, draw this picture like Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, it'll produce a pretty good result. But then if you say, produce or draw something that's never heard of and based on some artist that's never been heard of, then you're probably not going to get a good result because the AI is just not creative, right? It does what it has been taught and trained on, but it can't take that next leap at this point. So, yeah, I think that does set humans apart. I think on one hand, though, the AI gives us the ability to be more creative. So it allows, like myself, I can do a ton more and try more things technically and building things that I would have, without AI. So I see it as a good partner to help me create and build things. Um, yeah, I think people shouldn't get uh, discouraged and remember how creative they are and kind of dig into that and their passions. And I think that will keep them set apart for the foreseeable future. So, and
I I think creativity is. I agree with you. Creativity is vastly important, and it's still the case. I think even now with these tools that for example, if using that art example, if I were to use the tools to try to create art through a prompt and description, it might be perfectly acceptable. But if I turn to friends of mine that are artists and they go to do the same thing, they will distinguish in nuances that I don't see and create, use the tool to generate even more and be more interesting. And I think that creativity, it's both the creative, but it's also the creative eye, right? That understands how to interpret differently and think about it differently. That yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's unique, and it spans everything, right? Even the code that people are writing, like, okay, all these co-pilots, they can do everything for you. It's like, yeah, but they don't know what to do. They don't know what to build. You still have to, guide it correctly, and it still matters how you articulate your system and how you articulate what you're asking it to do. Well, thank you so much for a great conversation today. Really appreciate it.
thank you. It's great.
I love I love the journey you're on and what you're working towards, and the fact that you're actually breaking it up. You're unique in the fact that you're giving this more human thoughtfulness to the solution. You're not just trying to say, "Here it is, it's done," but you're actually thinking about weaving in the human component to it. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. It's Matt.